Hi guys, it's Sophie. So we're going to continue on with my fiction wrap up for February because I rambled far too much in my non-fiction section to make it into one video, which was the original plan. So I'll go through my fiction now. Now, the first one's going to be a dead quick chat. I read The Crying of Lot 49 by Thomas Pynchon. This was one I picked up because of its similarities, sort of to Infinite Jest in terms of style and a little bit of storyline. And David Foster Wallace sort of referred to this book a fair bit, it seems. And I have near nothing to say because I don't feel that I understood this book. I read it, the broad strokes of the storyline I feel I got, but I don't feel that I properly engaged with this book. And because of that, I don't feel that I want to sort of start a conversation or start a review because I don't feel that that would be fair to the book or to me. So all I would say about this one is whilst it's short, it is very complicated, and I think it's one that I will revisit in time, but for the time being I really don't have anything to say. Now the next one is one that I've put to my TBR and I've been trying to read for ages, and I'm so glad I finished it, and it's The Many by Wyl Menmuir. Now this is an interesting little book actually. I didn't love it, but that's okay. I ended up giving it 3 stars, but it's sort of about really rural life. It's sort of about a lot of things. And there's one thing it's about that's central that I can't tell you because it is a spoiler. But to try and give you the feel, it's very rural. It has that insular and claustrophobic feel of small communities that rely on the land. So people who are very attuned to weather patterns and sunlight and sort of almost like the temperament of their environment. There is a certain feel to people who do that, and I know that because that's kind of the environment that I grew up in. Whilst my family wasn't part of that, I know that feeling. And I think that's what I enjoyed kind of most about this book, was that it did have a very rural English feel. But it also has elements of the real darkness and loneliness in really stark rural communities. So just going a bit more widely, but it tends to be that towns and cities and the variety and in the number of people drive out a great deal of that loneliness, and people who are detached in some manner can normally find some sense of community within larger groups of individuals, but in really rural settings that isn't always true, and I think that's one of the sort of central bits of feeling around this is about people who are unmoored from their community, which is so small that they are essentially unmoored from almost the whole of humanity. There's some really interesting things he plays with in here, which again play into the central theme, so I can't really talk about it too much, but things like these large cargo ships on the horizon that have writing in it that's in a language that seems familiar but that you can't quite reach, and this feeling of just claustrophobia and separation, I think. Now, as I say, I didn't love it, and I found the writing quite poetic, but I think I found it a little bit distancing. It felt so cold and dark that I don't think that I felt for any of the characters, which is where I think the book sort of and me didn't really gel. But I'm really glad that I finally got around to it, and I actually did find it more enjoyable than I thought I was going to, so I'm glad to have it off my TBR at the very least, and actually I got something from it. The next one is another one that's been hanging around for a little bit of time, and that is Do Not Say We Have Nothing by Madeline Thien. Thien. So another Man Booker one, another one I've been trying to read for a while. This one I enjoyed much more than The Many, and it's just far more interesting as a storyline, really. This is all about China. It's all about the history of China and sort of the feel of communism and the way in which Chinese people relate to their political histories and backgrounds. And it's also a story about family and this generational sort of connection that these individuals feel, and it's got this background of music, of sort of this musical prodigy, and this art that underlies everything, and how sometimes art is a power that's taken on by the government and embraced, and sometimes it's seen as a kind of liberty that the citizens can't be afforded. It was really beautiful, it was really lovely. I did feel as though I wanted to understand more about the context. So I actually ended up watching a few documentaries about Tiananmen Square, because that features really, really heavily in the book. It kind of it keeps going back to Tiananmen Square, and I enjoyed much more what I read after having watched those couple of documentaries that were just on YouTube than I did the stuff beforehand. But I think because you have that image in your head of Tiananmen Square, I think in a way I was building the book up to that moment, which wasn't really fair to it, because it felt like I was pressing action into a book that it was not at its heart an action book. But I did really enjoy it. I think the characters are really strong, and the depictions of music made me go away and listen to music, and I did feel like I was pulled into work with and engage with this book. And the next one I absolutely adored, and I knew I was going to love it, and I did, and it was To the Bright Edge of the World by Ivey. This is a great big fat book about a man who leaves his wife and goes away on this voyage to explore Alaska. Now, he has like a military background. He's sort of that frontier man. It's like the 1800s, and he's been chosen for his sort of military prowess to lead this team to this wilderness. And that on its own would be interesting, but what's really fabulous about this book is that it plays between him and his wife, who's called Sophie, who lives in this little rubbish, horrible barrack place, like just on the cusp of society. And the thing that makes it so wonderful is the contrast between the wilderness and emptiness and confusion and brutality of his life, and the brutalities of home for Sophie, and how she builds her own life in a way whilst he's sort of discovering this land. And it gave, you needed her to give him a personality, and she kind of was more strong, I think, as a character, but she needed him to force her out of herself, I think. But it was really interesting. I really loved all the characters in it, and there was this odd little magical edge and this dark edge to it that just gave me chills. There was one point that I can't tell you about because spoilers, but this one scene gave me proper goosebumps when I was reading it at work, and I absolutely love her work. I've really enjoyed The Snow Child. I loved this one as well. I loved The Bright Edge of the World. I'm so excited to see what she publishes next. She's the kind of thing that's like, she's one of my like auto-buy people. The stuff she writes, I'm really interested in reading, so keep going, keep doing all the good work, and I will buy whatever you publish next. Okay, and one left. So this one I read as a buddy read with Acacia and Vanessa, and I felt mixed, I think, about this one, but I did enjoy it. I did like it. And this is Fates and Furies by Lauren Groff. So a lot of people thought I was going to absolutely love this, and I can really see why. And do you know what parts of it I did absolutely love? Now, this book is told in two halves. It's told in Fates and it's told in Furies, and this is two separate characters. We have Lotto and Mathilde. Now, I really enjoyed the first half, which is Lotto's half, and I engaged in the story. I thought it was really fun. It's about this marriage. It's about sort of the idealism of like young love and youth, and about the ways in which small lies and violences and omissions in love and in life aren't necessarily things that end a relationship, and sometimes they help it, and just this kind of messed up view of marriage, but somewhat sort of raw, even with this like really privileged sort of setting. And I enjoyed it. The problem was Mathilde's section was 100 times more interesting and 100 times better, and I disliked Lotto's section having read Mathilde's. So that is my main issue with it, is essentially the beginning was good and it probably would have been a 4-star book. The ending was far better. The ending, Mathilde's part was much better and far more interesting, far more driven. She was the character that made the book worth reading. And the interest in the pair of them was not equal. It's hard because I think I'd almost wanted to have this a little bit like, I think it's Ali Smith How to Be Both, where some editions are backwards and some are forwards, and it wouldn't quite work because of the way the book's set out. But if I was sitting down like as an agent and saying what I think, because I would love to have known what I would have thought of Lotto if I'd read Mathilde first. Because reading Mathilde after Lotto changed my view of him in massively. And the way he sees her is also really important, and I really would want to know like how I would view it the other way around, and there's no way to do that. Like, even if you read the book backwards, it doesn't make sense because it is a linear storyline, even though it switches characters. But yeah, so I really liked it. I know a lot of people have said like, oh, you really need to read it, and I can see why. I think it's the writing is gorgeous, and I think that's what everyone thinks when they're like, oh, Sophie, you'd like this. Yes, absolutely, more books with writing like this, absolutely up my street entirely. But there was that difference between how good one bit was and how good the other bit was, tainted it a little bit in my head, and I felt as though it could have had something a little bit more. I don't know what that is. I don't know whether I'd rather have. I think that switching in my head would be the ideal. The ability to sit down and read the book again, but read them from the other's perspective at the same alternate times. That would be my ideal. It's not possible, but there you go. That's my feelings on Fates and Furies, and that is all of the fiction that I've read in the month of February. So hopefully you've enjoyed hearing me ramble for far too long in 2 videos, but I've had a lot of fun, and I think I've reviewed them in some coherent fashion and to some depth, so hopefully you've enjoyed it as well. I'll see you soon in my next video, which is going to be talking about books that you don't agree with, so hopefully you enjoy that one. I'm a little bit nervous to film it, so be nice. So yeah, I will see you guys soon in that video. Have fun. Bye bye.